to Neurodiverse Voices, a space for honest conversations about disability, neurodiversity, healing, growth, and becoming who you truly are.
I've spent most of my life trying to become somebody easier to love. And I don't think I realised I was doing it. I just thought that was what everyone did. You adapt, you stay quiet, you change your behaviour depending on who you're around. You study people. And you become what feels safest. And when you spend your whole life doing that, eventually you stop knowing where the mask ends and where you begin. Today's episode is about accepting your true self. Not the Instagram version of self-acceptance, not the just love yourself version. I mean the real version, the uncomfortable version, the grieving and exhausting version, the freeing version. The version where you slowly realise maybe you were never the problem to begin with. When I look back at my childhood, one of the biggest things I remember is feeling different. Not wrong necessarily, just different. Like everyone else had quietly been handed instructions for how to exist in the world, and somewhere I'd missed the meeting. I struggled with the things that seemed to come naturally to other people. Socialising, friendships, understanding expectations, navigating environments. And because I didn't understand why, I felt different. I thought the answer was to become more like everybody else. So I adapted constantly. I changed how I spoke, how I acted, and how I responded emotionally. I became incredibly good at reading what version of me other people wanted. It's exhausting. I think for a lot of neurodivergent people, masking becomes survival before we even know what masking is. You don't consciously decide to do it. You just slowly learn. People respond better when I'm, less me. And that stays with you. Something I spent years trying to hide how intense I am, especially in my interests. If something interested me, I didn't just casually enjoy it. I needed to know everything. When I was little, it was cloud formations, cars, karate, Japanese, to go with the karate. And as I'm older, it's doing my nails, making things on my Cricut, colouring, pens. I got my black belt by 12 years old, my adult black belt, because when something clicked in my brain, I completely immersed myself in it. I do the same with research. I like to know everything I can. And now I realise that it's actually a beautiful thing and a rare thing. But growing up, I often was made to feel like I was too much, too intense, then too emotional, too passionate, but too sensitive. So I started hiding those parts of myself, not because they were wrong, but because they weren't understood. And I think one of the saddest things is how many people spend their lives shrinking beautiful parts of themselves just to make other people comfortable. I also hid how deeply hurt I felt. Not fitting in hurt me. Not being able to make friends hurt me. Feeling isolated. But I would joke about it, laugh it off, pretend I didn't care, when actually I cared deeply. And now I've found people who accept me exactly as I am. Not a smaller version of me, not a filtered version of me. Me. And I genuinely don't think I realised how life-changing that would feel. Now, there's a story that my dad tells about when I was little. He was putting a gate up in the garden and something about it wasn't working. Apparently, I looked at it and basically said, Why don't you just do it this way? That doesn't make sense. And he still remembers it now. I don't even remember saying it. In fact, I don't even remember much about that age. But he remembers it because it highlighted that my brain worked differently. And honestly, I think that's what so much of this episode comes down to. I've spent years trying to force myself to think, behave, communicate, and exist in ways that weren't natural for me. Not because I was broken, but because difference makes people uncomfortable when they don't understand it. Masking, for me, feels like exhaustion. Pure exhaustion. It feels like your entire body is carrying dead weight. It's hyper-awareness all the time, monitoring yourself constantly, analysing every interaction. I've even noticed throughout my life that sometimes I couldn't do something as me. But if I imagined myself as somebody confident that I admired and I tried to be them, all of a sudden I can do it. And that's heartbreaking when you think about it, because underneath all of that was a little girl who never believed her own voice was enough. And honestly, pretending became impossible when I got ill. When I developed the FND and my health deteriorated, everything became magnified by 100. The exhaustion, the pain, the fatigue. I physically didn't have the energy anymore to constantly perform. But I still tried. 4 years. And eventually I realised something huge. All the little bits of energy I had left weren't going towards joy. They were going towards pretending. And pretending was making me sicker. Accepting myself has involved losing people, but not in the tragic way people assume, in the necessary way. Because I realised I was spending so much of my life terrified of disappointing people that I abandoned myself completely. And once I started challenging that, everything changed. I started asking, why do certain people get to decide how small I should make myself? Why? Why does somebody else get to choose whether my needs are acceptable? Why should I silence myself to make other people comfortable? And I think once you start asking those questions honestly, and with the help of therapy, you can't really go backwards. I also realised how much words matter, actions matter. Being constantly misunderstood affects you. And for the first time in my life, I started recognising being treated badly does not become acceptable just because it's familiar. And that changed everything. And I talk a lot about finding your people, and I need people to understand this isn't just emotional, it's physical. Growing up, my anxiety showed up heavily in my body. Stomach migraines, panic attacks, shutdowns, freeze responses. My nervous system constantly felt unsafe. Whereas now, my body feels lighter, calmer. I actively look for workshops to go to. I love learning now. I love meeting new people. I love conversations with new people. And yeah, I still get tired. And I still struggle. But I no longer feel like I have to perform to belong. It changes everything. And I think sometimes people underestimate how healing safe people can be. Safe people give your nervous system permission to unclench. Developing F&D changed my relationship with my identity massively. My life looks completely different now. I can't do the sports that I used to love. I use a wheelchair. My body needs different things. And honestly, people stare. That was something I had to get used to really quickly. But weirdly, becoming visibly different made me stop hiding other parts of myself too. Because once you're already outside of what society sees as normal, you start questioning why you were ever trying so hard to fit inside a box in the first place. I've also had to completely relearn my worth. Because we live in a world obsessed with productivity. When your body slows down, you suddenly realise how much of your self-worth is attached to how productive you've been or are. But resting yesterday allowed me to live today. Yesterday, I slept almost all day. And because I listened to my body instead of fighting it, today I've filmed videos, washed my hair independently, started making my home more accessible. I've not been able to do that in the last 2 months. And it matters. Rest isn't failure. Listening to yourself isn't failure. Doing life differently is most definitely not a failure. One thing I really wish adults understood when I was younger is that behaviour always has a reason. I wish more people had looked at the cause instead of only seeing the behaviour itself. Because children aren't difficult for fun. There's usually something underlying. It could be confusion, overwhelm, sensory needs, anxiety, fear, feeling misunderstood. And I say this to my dad all the time now, because he feels guilty sometimes for not recognising things sooner. But you don't know what you don't know. And that's true. What matters is whether you're willing to learn once we do know. And I think honestly, online matters more than people realise. Some of the people who have helped me the most have never spoken directly to me. They just showed up honestly, talking about disability, fatigue, mental health, change, grief, adaptation. And suddenly I'd watch them and think, wait, if they can exist as themselves, maybe I can too. Representation matters so much. And honesty matters. Not because it fixes everything, but because sometimes seeing someone else survive something similar to you reminds you that you can survive it too. You're not alone. So, if you're listening to this episode right now and you feel trapped behind that mask, I need you to know something. You're not alone, even if it feels like it right now. Even if your environment makes you feel misunderstood, even if you feel too much, too emotional, too sensitive, too different. You're not the only person feeling this way. And healing doesn't usually happen through one giant life-changing moment. It happens through those tiny steps, those tiny brave moments. It could be filming the video, going to a workshop, getting into the car, resting when your body needs it, asking for help or using a fidget, taking up space. Small steps become big steps. And I didn't find my people until my late 20s. And honestly, I wish I could go back and tell younger me, you were never hard to love. You were just surrounded by people who didn't understand you yet. And maybe somebody listening needs to hear that too. You do not have to shrink yourself to deserve connection. You do not have to perform to deserve love. And one day you'll find people who let you breathe as yourself. Thank you for being here.